You are standing near a fire 40,000 years ago. The sun is gone. The children are asleep. Smoke crawls into the dark. Somewhere beyond the camp, something moves through the grass. Then you notice it. One person keeps looking at another person across the fire. Not once. Not by accident. A piece of roasted meat gets passed in their direction. A cracked water pouch gets repaired without being asked. The next morning, they both walk the same path to gather food, even though everyone can see exactly what is happening. No dating apps, no restaurants, no love songs saved on a phone. Just a small tribe, a dangerous world, and two humans who suddenly care too much about each other. So what did ancient humans do when they fell in love? The answer is not as soft as modern romance makes it sound. The moment two people chose each other, the whole group had a reason to care. Who leaves their family? Who shares food with whom? Who helps raise the children? A crush could change the politics of an entire camp overnight. For a long time, scientists weren't even sure romantic love was universal. Maybe it was something invented by cities. Maybe ancient humans only cared about mating and survival, and the obsessive emotional part came later. Then in 1992, William Jankowiak and Edward Fischer compared 166 human societies from the standard cross-cultural sample. Different languages, different gods, different rules about marriage. Romantic love showed up in 147 of them. Not as a borrowed idea spreading between neighbors, but independently, repeatedly, in societies that had never heard of each other. Ancient people did not invent love after civilization. Civilization inherited love from something much older, and the reason starts with a helpless baby. A newborn horse can stand within hours. A baby turtle breaks from its egg and heads to the sea without anyone's help. A human baby cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot hide, cannot understand danger, and will scream at full volume while a predator is nearby. For years, a human child is essentially a loud alarm system that burns resources and attracts threats. That biological fact changed everything about how humans attach to each other. If children need years of constant care, one adult is often not enough. Food has to be found while someone guards the shelter. Sickness arrives without warning. A child must learn which berries kill, where snakes shelter, and why unfamiliar tracks near water mean the group should move. And that knowledge takes years to transfer. Evolutionary psychologists describe romantic love as a commitment device, which sounds clinical until you understand what it means. The feeling makes leaving painful. It floods the brain with reward when the person is close, and punishes distance with something that registers, like physical discomfort. Neuroscientists scanning the brains of people who describe themselves as intensely in love found that looking at their partner's photograph activated the ventral tegmental area, the same dopamine circuit that fires during cocaine use. Not metaphorically similar, chemically identical. That brain is 200,000 years old, which means ancient humans weren't falling into a softer version of what you feel. They were feeling the same chemical storm, the same inability to sleep, the same obsessive return to one face, with no private bedroom, no locked door, no way to keep it quiet. Because in a camp of 30 people, nothing stayed quiet. A repeated gift meant something. A jealous argument meant something else. Two people disappearing at the same time meant the entire group had opinions before either of them had said a word. This is why ancient courtship probably looked less like flirting and more like a long public test. A lazy person was dangerous. A selfish person was expensive. A reckless person could get everyone killed. So ancient attraction had to look past the face. Does this person share meat after a hunt, even in a bad season? Do the elders trust them? Do they stay calm when something goes wrong? Beauty might open the door, but in a world where reputation was the only record anyone kept, behavior was the currency that actually mattered. When attraction did take hold, it rarely stayed between two people. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer marriage found that families were almost always involved. In most societies studied, parents or close relatives approved, and often arranged, unions. A young man might work for the woman's family as part of the process. Gifts moved between households. An alliance formed alongside the attachment. To modern ears that sounds cold, but in a world without courts, hospitals, or any safety net beyond the people sleeping nearest to you, marriage was how humans built trust between groups. A partner wasn't only a lover, they were a bridge between two networks of people who might otherwise have nothing to do with each other. That bridge had consequences beyond the couple. Researchers screened 1,785 ancient human genomes spanning the last 45,000 years and found that only around 3% showed signs of parents who were cousins. Even the oldest hunter-gatherer groups were routinely finding partners from outside their immediate circle. They had no understanding of genetics, but they had memory, taboo, and social rules strong enough to keep pushing people outward. Falling in love could pull someone across a valley. A woman joining another camp brought plant knowledge from her home territory. A man doing bride service learned a new hunting route. A child born from that union connected two groups that had previously treated each other as strangers. Ideas traveled through relationships that left no other record. But before any of that happened, someone had to get noticed. Long before perfume or tailored clothing, humans decorated their bodies. Shell beads found at Blombos Cave in South Africa date to 75,000 years ago, each one deliberately perforated, some still carrying traces of red ochre. They had no practical function. They were made to be seen. Rare shells signaled distance traveled. A finely shaped spear communicated patience and skill. Dance near a fire said something about strength that words hadn't evolved to say yet. A love letter can be written in ink. A prehistoric love letter might have been a repaired basket, a choice cut of meat, or the best sleeping position near the warmth, offered without comment. Then, around 11,000 years ago, someone carved something that still feels impossible. Near Sakhri in the Judean desert, a small calcite stone was shaped into two human figures locked together in an embrace. It fits in the hand. It predates writing, predates the pyramids, predates every empire humans later built and lost. The British Museum describes it as the oldest known sculpture of two people in intimate union. Nobody knows who made it. Nobody knows if it represented love, ritual, fertility, or something with no modern equivalent. The person who carved it left no explanation. But a heartbeat leaves nothing in soil. A voice dissolves. A name disappears. This object survived 11,000 years because someone put the effort into stone, and that effort is its own kind of statement. Thousands of years later, archaeologists found a double burial at Ethnology Cave in Greece. A man and a woman, 5,800 years old, placed with their limbs interlocked. Were they lovers? Nobody can prove it. The arrangement may have been ritual, symbolic, or chosen by grieving relatives rather than the dead themselves. But somebody made that choice. Somebody looked at two bodies and decided they should remain together underground. That is not modern romance projected backward. That is ancient people arranging what they needed to believe. By the time writing arrived, love finally had a way to survive. Most early clay tablets were practical. Grain counts, land records, tax debts, livestock tallies. Writing was invented because cities needed administration, not confession, but emotion forced its way into the record anyway. By 2500 BC, Sumerian and Akkadian tablets show kissing already embedded in romantic intimacy, not as a new invention, but as something familiar enough to write about casually. A clay model from around 1800 BC, now in the British Museum, shows a couple on a bed kissing. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen and Oxford, who studied the tablet record, noted that kissing almost certainly predates its earliest written mention by a significant margin. The clay preserved the behavior. It did not create it. Then around 2000 BC, the love song of Shu Sin was pressed into wet clay in Sumer, one of the oldest surviving love poems on Earth. It was tied to sacred kingship and ritual performance, not private feeling. And that is exactly the point. Ancient love was never contained in one box. It moved between desire and politics, between private attachment and public ceremony, between two people and the community watching them. A marriage could bless a harvest. A union could secure an alliance. A love song could serve a king. Modern people try to separate love from religion, family, and government. Ancient people rarely had that option, because in a fragile world, all of those things were weight-bearing walls in the same structure. Which means ancient people sometimes fell in love freely, and sometimes lost that freedom entirely to family pressure, survival debt, or politics they had no power over. Love was real. The right to act on it was not guaranteed. But forbidden love is not a modern invention. Jealousy is not a modern invention. The specific pain of wanting one person while the world arranges something else, that is old. The brain that runs inside you now was built inside conditions like those. It rewards closeness. It punishes separation with something that registers like an injury. It turns one unremarkable face into the only face worth studying. Ancient people had no word for dopamine and no theory of attachment. They only knew the experience from the inside. The way a familiar footstep changes the body before the mind has time to react. The way waiting for one person bends time differently than waiting for anyone else. The way grief after a specific loss feels different from every other kind of hard. That last part may be the oldest evidence of love that archaeology can actually touch. Not a sculpture, not a poem, not a burial arrangement. Grief. Across thousands of years of human burial sites, the dead are placed with care, with food, tools, pigment, ornament. Not every burial proves romance, but every careful burial proves that somebody mattered enough to stop the business of survival and attend to them. In a world where hunger does not pause, that pause is expensive. It only makes sense if the bond was real. So what did ancient humans do when they fell in love? Roughly the same thing you do. They noticed someone. They found reasons to be nearby. They used whatever they had, food, effort, object, skill, reputation, to say something they didn't yet have words for. They involved people who had opinions about it. They followed rules when they had to, and broke them when they couldn't help it. They carved it into stone once, and buried each other twice, and eventually pressed it into clay. They had the same problem you have. How do you trust one person in a world that takes things away without warning? How do you make something as irrational as desire safe enough to build a life around? Thousands of years later, that question is still running. A message left unread can still change your mood. A familiar face can still shift your body before your thoughts catch up. Grief can still make the world feel structurally wrong in a way that nothing practical fixes. The setting changed. The question didn't. Somewhere across a fire older than history, a person looked at another person too long and then pretended to be busy. And that ancient, embarrassing, completely human moment is still happening right now.